Welcome! In this video you will learn the purpose of the unit bubble map, how it is developed by students, and how students use it throughout the unit. The unit bubble map technique is based on Kelly Marcorelli's book Teaching Science with Interactive Notebooks, as related to MyStar by Kalamazoo Master Teacher Dawn Kaler. A unit bubble map is a visual instructional tool that allows students to organize their questions in a way that brings out relationships between key concepts and develops a path for investigation of the unit challenge. As you will see, it encourages student thinking on the unit challenge question in a purposeful way by allowing students to identify questions that arise as they consider the broad unit challenge question. The process of questioning encourages students to identify information needed to investigate the unit challenge. Students revise the unit bubble map throughout the unit as their understanding of concepts evolve. Remember that in the MyStar curriculum, students revisit the unit challenge every lesson throughout the unit by investigating a broad unit challenge question. All MyStar units begin with a unit opener lesson, have several middle lessons, and end with a unit closer lesson. The unit bubble map is initially developed during the Check Your Progress instructional phase of the unit opener, after students have encountered the unit challenge scenario and its guiding unit challenge question. The unit bubble map activity serves as an initial probe into student thinking, understandings, and preconceptions. To begin the creation of the unit bubble map, students are prompted to consider what questions can we ask and investigate in order to try to answer the unit challenge question. Students individually write down the questions that arise as they consider the unit challenge question. Once each student has written their questions, students will gather in their unit challenge groups, usually 3 to 4 students, to share their questions with each other. The group listens carefully to each team member's set of questions, noting where ideas overlap and which questions they like best and why. Then each unit challenge group discusses the questions and comes to a consensus on 3 questions that they feel are the most relevant to the unit challenge question and that they will share with the whole class. The teacher can now facilitate the creation of the class unit bubble map on a whiteboard or butcher block paper where it can be displayed and revisited throughout the unit. To begin, the teacher writes the unit challenge questions in the middle space. Each unit challenge group shares their 3 questions, and the teacher adds these to the map. Students should listen and participate carefully during this process to identify duplicate or similar questions. Next, the teacher asks students to carefully examine the class unit bubble map to identify questions that have not been asked and should be added to the map. This step requires careful teacher facilitation. The teacher should work collaboratively with the students to identify the questions that are the most relevant to investigating the unit challenge question. It is the teacher's job to direct students toward developing questions that are most similar to the lesson questions of the unit. It is okay if all lesson questions are not represented in this initial class unit bubble map, or some of the questions seem off track. These issues will become evident as the unit progresses, student understanding deepens, and the bubble map is revisited. Once the students have narrowed down which questions are most relevant for the initial class bubble map, each student creates their own unit bubble map in his or her science journal. Here is an example of a class unit bubble map created by a student. Notice that the unit challenge question is in the middle of the page spread. Students should be encouraged to use color and curved lines, as these help stimulate creative thinking. These steps help students to think more deeply about the questions, which makes it more likely that they will keep them in mind throughout the unit. The initial classroom unit bubble map developed during the unit opener lesson provides a roadmap for the class as they move forward through the middle lessons of the unit. During the anchoring experience phase of each middle lesson, the teacher will draw the students' attention to one or more of the questions on the classroom unit bubble map that most closely fits the MyStar lesson question located at the top of the lesson plan. If the class's unit bubble map does not yet include a question that dovetails with the lesson question, then the lesson's anchoring experience activity provides an opportunity for teachers to facilitate class discussion so that students develop such a question. In this way, students are driving the lessons and investigations during the unit. At the end of every few middle lessons, the students should be provided the opportunity to update and revise the unit bubble map in their journals. During this time, it is usual for students to identify questions which aren't needed, and revise questions or develop additional questions which need to be added to the unit bubble map. At this time, students should be provided the opportunity to answer bubble map questions as best as they can in their journal. In this example unit bubble map, questions are outlined in blue, and answers are circled in red. You can see that most of these questions have answers. This activity provides the opportunity for students to reflect on their learning and see how their thinking has changed over time. Student thinking is visible, providing a formative assessment opportunity for teachers and a chance to provide feedback to students. Let's take a closer look at another student's unit bubble map. Here's the unit challenge question in the middle. How can science and engineering protect people from natural hazards? One of the questions is this one. What damage can natural hazards make? The student's answer is, natural hazards can make serious damage to even cause death. Another question developed by the class is, what tools do we have to predict natural hazards? The answer underneath is seismometers, satellites, which isn't a complete sentence, but that is perfectly acceptable for a bubble map at this point. You can see there isn't an answer underneath this question yet, and that is fine. In the unit closer lesson, students will revisit the unit bubble map for a final opportunity to reflect on their learning and to update their answers. Students will likely discover that some of their initial answers are incorrect and may be able to use what they've learned in the unit to add more advanced answers. These changes should be celebrated as proof of your students' increased understanding. In addition, students may discover that some of their questions remain unanswered, or that they have even more questions than before. This is typical of real-world science and engineering. The conclusion of one study often leads to the start of several more investigations. Let's review. The class unit bubble map is used to help students identify and clarify information that is needed to answer the unit challenge question. It is initially created at the end of the first lesson in a unit, as a way for students to begin thinking about the unit challenge scenario and unit challenge questions. Each classroom will develop their own initial classroom bubble map that should be displayed and updated throughout the unit. Also, each student maintains their own version of a unit bubble map in their science journal. The unit bubble map is revisited throughout the unit to identify lesson questions that will drive each MyStar middle lesson, as well as a place for students to record their evolving understanding. The unit bubble map is a fluid document that helps focus students toward answering the unit challenge questions and is an essential instructional tool for every MyStar unit.